Good morning.
Anna, good morning.
You made it.
Let's see. We got pets conversation. Oh.
Hi, guy.
Say
What's his
hi,
name
guys.
again? I forget.
Yes.
What's your guy's name again? I forget.
Let's see. Can you okay, Anna? Let's see. I don't want to be on
Can you hear me now? I know we
let's
had this problem last time. It wasn't picking me up. Yeah,
see.
I
Can
can
you hear me
hear you.
okay? Okay, I can hear you too. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. I brought Taz, so Taz is at the studio. We got pets time. Okay. Oh yeah.
I've been abandoned. One cat's trying to get outside again. Murphy's on the floor here. Yeah.
Cute. Yeah.
Everyone's fed and happy.
Cool. And we got coffee. You got your like mushrooms of the Northwest cup.
I do.
Which ones you can eat, which ones you can not eat.
I think you can all eat those. That'd be hilarious if there's like poison ones out there, actually. Yeah, I'm painfully that Portland archetype sometimes, you know.
Well, I do know that type, and actually, I've described you a handful of times in recent weeks, not like gratuitously or anything, like, but like maybe 2 or 3 times I've said like, yeah, Hannah is up in Portland, you know, and then they're like, oh, you know, so you feel compelled to describe people, right? And I'm trying to think of how I describe you. Now I just put myself on the spot, right? So it's positive, but it leans into that Portland stereotype, but then it's really just an authentic, integrated version of that Portland stereotype. You know, like the Portlandia, where it's like there's this conscientious, tell me about the chicken's life, right?
Yes.
It's like, yeah, like we actually care about animals, and we would like them to have good lives, but when we actually go to restaurants, we might not ask that question. And then in general, I like your style. So I mean, it changes. I haven't seen you in person in a couple of years now, but here's how I would say it to your face, Hannah: is you're comfortable. You're comfortable in your own skin, and you're you're a natural adult person. So I don't get the impression from you that I could be wrong, but I don't get the impression from you that you try too hard to put on a facade, or and that's why I put pressure on you to keep to this one, because it's fun, because we had some long weeks, and you tried to reschedule on me.
I was just like, oh, what do I do? Am I going to have the brain bandwidth to do this? Yes, I'm just going to stutter over things. And as the more coffee replaces my blood, then but that's a very high compliment. Likewise, when I was describing you to my partner, maybe not these words, but specifically as an example to paint the picture, I was like, the first time I became aware of Alan existing in this world was when I was helping a workshop for Oregon art educators. And he was there for probably like 30, 40 minutes after the workshop was done, just finishing up his prints and really taking your time, and you were like in it and you wanted to do the best work possible, not to a neurotic level, like you just care so much, and I've since never seen that at a workshop, and I think that's really endearing. So.
Wow. Okay. Well, thanks for saying that, because I wasn't. That's always helpful information, right? I was having this conversation last night on the phone with Leland Strubig over at Central Art Supply. And we were talking about the nature of getting feedback and criticism, because he reflected to me like, he came over for a studio visit and he thought he said something critical about my work that like maybe he shouldn't have, and that my reaction to it was like thanks for sharing your opinion or something. And then he said, like, he was paying me a compliment on the phone by saying like I wasn't reactive or defensive, and then it made me reflect on like, well, that's great, I'm glad I acted that way, because I probably don't always act that way. But that it, on reflection, it's like, it's always valuable to get other people's perceptions of how we live in the world, like how we, like the mannerisms that are the kind of like the resonating frequencies that we put off. Like, do people, are they happy to be with us, or do we irritate the daylights out of people? That's good to know, because I was probably oblivious. I was probably just very consumed. Yeah. I don't even actually like remember off the top of my head that event. I would have to like see a photograph. And was it at Southern Oregon University?
Yeah, I was in the print shop. Summer and I were running it, and I think, oh man, I can't remember. Did we have you do monotypes, or it must have been monotype, because that's like her wheelhouse. Yep. Yeah. And I think there was like one
silk screening. Was it silk screens?
It might have been. Yes, yeah, that's right. And it might have been like a little Erlenmeyer flask, like one of those little like beakers. Okay, yeah.
I'll have those. Oh my goodness, I should pull those out. I gotta go find them. Get those and show them.
It was hilarious. It was like, I think Summer was just tired, and it wasn't like disparaging about you, but she was like, "Oh my God, we got to go. He's got to get out of here." And I was just like, "It's fine. He's finishing up. I'll stay after and like let him do his thing." But it was just, super endearing, and it just like, you really take your time and you focus on what you're doing and you care and you want to make sure it's like done all the way, which is really cool. Because I in a workshop setting, I'd probably abandon ship, like ambiguity. I'm like, oh, you want me to make something? Like, no, I'll just watch you do it, and then I'll do it later when no one's watching me,
So part of it with the printmaking is that I don't have those skills, like I have some printmaking skills, but not nearly to the degree that you or Summer have. And so it was like an opportunity for me to have access to a resource. I was probably being very selfish, actually. I was probably like, this is my time in the printmaking studio. I'm not a big deal, and people aren't going to pay me to do this. So I'm signed up for this teacher workshop, and here's access to expertise and resources. Like, try to make the most of it. But patience, like on that note, I think we have such a like cultural momentum, or our culture is such that it's like, and I actually think we get it from our education system, right? Where it's like, the deadline is today, I need to get the grades in because the end of the quarter is now, and your report card's coming next week. So just do your best with the time that you have. And we kind of like get conditioned to complete things. And one of the things that I feel like I've learned through art is to just like try to be more present and patient. And the thing in its best is going to take as long as it needs to take. And so some of these paintings sitting out in the studio right now, Hannah, are like, instead of, and as I get older, right? So like when I was in my mid-20s, my friends would criticize me, and they would say like, dude, when are you going to finish that painting? You've been working on it for 3 months or something. And it's like, and I'd feel guilty. I'd be like, oh man, like, look at all the stuff that's happened in the world in 3 months, and I can't even finish a painting. And now it's like, I got paintings out there that are 3 years old. I got paintings that are actually like, I don't know, 6 years old that I would still like to revise. And so they're like older than my kids. And I'm just like, oh, they'll get done when they get done. And I'm kind of becoming attracted to this idea of like advocating for the patience of the work to the world, like telling the world, like, hey, you guys, like, chill, back off. Like, it's art, and you don't have to understand it, but it's certainly not accountable to your values and your impatience, it's developing on its own, and more kind of like, I've never made wine, but like the kind of idea I have in my head of good wine is like, it's a patient process, and then like the older it gets, the better it gets. And so there's some paintings where it's like, I don't really advertise this or try to, it's not like my agenda. It's just like, certain paintings, it's like, I don't know what to do right now. I'm not inspired to work on you. And I'm not giving up on you. It's just, I don't know what to do with you right now. So you're going to sit there for like 6 months or 8 months, or go into storage and come back out. And it wouldn't surprise me at all, Hannah, like if I'm fortunate enough to, not have any like accidents for the next 15, 20 years or 30, 40 years, however long I get to live, that like some of these paintings will take 40 years to paint, where it's like, I'm still working on that canvas and it's got wet paint from 2043 and it's sitting in the studio right now. So like the idea of expectations, right? Like people in our world expect things to like get delivered to our doorstep tomorrow because I ordered it on Amazon Prime or something. And it's like, hey, I commissioned that artwork. I want it now. What is it like? I have this thing bouncing around in my head from some kind of pop culture reference where it's like, it's my money and I want it now.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, no, I have.
Something, I don't know if that's like a Southern Oregon cash credit sort of a thing, but
yeah, no, it is like one of those scammy loan
yeah,
things, which is a perfect way to sum that up. And it's like the idea, like we were saying about school training us to like, you have these deadlines. Here's the time we need to make you the most, like, here's the things you need to know and keep in your head to make you the most efficient worker for later in your life. So it's all geared towards these capitalist ventures, right? And being a capitalist body, a capitalist servant. And it's not like, I mean, there are schools and I hope to see more of that, but like me going to grade school, it's not like, here's a class about personal development, and who you are in the world. And there is no deadlines, but we're just going to like kind of be, and people would write that off as woo woo, of course. But that's what art is, right? It's this constantly evolving. It doesn't have a certain pace. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's circuitous. And it, even though it does, serve capitalist ventures sometimes because we need to make money, like it has to act in a different way just by its nature. And yeah, it's like, I think one of the biggest things I've tried to, like on this note with my own practice is, I think in the beginning of grad school and probably close to the end of it, like probably right before I started gaining momentum on my thesis, I had this idea that I had everything I had put out in the world really needed to be perfect and complete. And I think that was stifling me of not, I was still putting stuff out, but it not at like a pace that, or I wasn't like finishing ideas in ways that I could, because I kind of like truncated it at a certain point to just like put it out. And I think that's also like just being in grad school, like you kind of have to do that. But now having some time out of it, every time I'm in a project, like most recently making this little book, I was like, this doesn't have to be perfect. Like you need to just make it and respond, and you can always revisit these ideas later. Like this is just scratching the surface. This is always scratching the surface. And I'm kind of treating that as a mantra of like, I'm just going to scratch a little here this time, but then I'll probably come back. And now I'm like thinking about projects that go back to things that I did in undergrad and like resurfacing those and going back, expanding them a little bit more. And that's just like, I don't think that's ever going to end. And I think that's similar to your paintings, where it's like I'm not ready to work on that one yet. Or maybe perhaps like you'll put it off to the side long enough and you'll look at it one day and like, oh, actually you're complete. I feel that now. Like I feel like you're you've synthesized and I can put you out in the world now. I just had to have that closure for me, you know?
Yeah. And an orientation. So you said closure. For me, it's the relationship between artist as perceiver and artwork as like entity and identity with its own nature. And so sometimes it feels like what's happening is that, you know, I make a thing and then I can't recognize it because I'm adjusting my expectations or even my paradigms and ability to recognize something for what it is. And then, so the work itself doesn't change, but that in the time span of 6 months or 2 years or 10 years, I've reoriented myself. I've learned new things, had new experiences, and now I can recognize the artwork for the merit and potential that it does have, not according to my paradigm and expectations of what I thought it should be, right?
Yeah.
I
It
just
is like a relationship. Like when you meet someone, you have those assumptions. You know, we always do that. We can't avoid that. Like trying to figure out who a person is at first, and then as you get to know them, like those fall away and those change, maybe for good or better, or worse. Who knows?
yeah. Well, so on that note, Hannah, like, what do you think of this is an idea, and it's a popular idea. So I'm trying to like, again, kind of like avoid the like soundbite cliche, like as thinkers and artists. It's I always feel a pressure to like to kind of cut through like the art speak bullshit and try to make a sincere statement. And so this was a really actually like sincere connection with something kind of more in the philosophical theoretical. But then I found out that like it's pretty popular, and then the analytic philosophers criticize it because it's coming from continental philosophy, and that's not rigorous enough, and it's like woo woo, just kind of armchair philosophizing. So like the two branches of philosophy are in competition, or what is it? Analytical philosophy just kind of discredits continental philosophy, right? So I found that out, and this is a continental philosophy concept. So, but for whatever it's worth, like it makes sense to me, and I think it's helpful. And this is Graham Harman's object-oriented ontology.
Yeah.
And right, like objects. So if you're familiar, what I wanted to talk about was like parts of objects interacting with other parts of objects. And so what we have is like his example is the fire and the cotton. I think it's fire and cotton, but like certain properties of fire interact with certain properties of the cotton. So it's like the effect is burning, because when fire and cotton get together, what happens is burning. So fire doesn't always, and see, this is where I'm a doofus, because it's like fire actually does always burn, like that's its nature. But cotton doesn't always have to catch on fire, right? So cotton can also be like spun and turned into a shirt, right, or a hat or something. So it has to do with like how we interface with other entities, and that's where like that's really helpful, because like I can look at my mug and my pencil, and like that's a collision, and it makes this kind of nice annoying ting sound.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, like it also has, like this mug also has potentialities and the promise like of holding coffee, so like I can drink from it, like that's part of its function. But if I always approach the mug with like hitting it with sticks, I'm going to think that the mug's function is to make noise and bounce a stick off of. But that's a limitation of how I'm treating the mug, not a limitation of the mug itself.
Yes.
And so that's really helpful, because we can discover our own agency in the world, where it's like my relationship with this person or this environment isn't inherently limited. I actually have agency, and if I reorient myself to that environment or the way that I act on this person, then I could have a different experience. It doesn't always have to be burning cotton, right? It could be, you know, constructive. And so actually that's a question I had for you, Hannah, going into today was like, when we're talking about like social justice advocacy, or like the contemporary political climate, you know, like just the social ecosystem that we're in. And you mentioned in our talk last time that it's like you're interested in having constructive conversations, right? Where we're not roasting people and call out culture and cancel culture sort of a thing. And so my question was like, how do we constructively engage people when I think we would both agree that like people need to be confronted. Like if you're living in denial of you know, your own privilege, and you're oppressing people, and there's people on the margins who are suffering because of your voting force, right? Like the mainstream voters vote in a way that perpetuates systemic forms of oppression. Like, how do we have constructive conversations? And I know this is probably a heavy question. Feel free. I mean, take it wherever you want. But if you can hear the spirit of what I'm asking, it's like, you know, what are some strategies of like how we use art or how we engage people? But like, you know, I think I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on like, you know, it's not just being nice, like we don't want to enable. So there's enablement, there's like abrasive confrontation, which is like, you know, you're the enemy and you're enemy number one, and I'm going to engage you in war. So like, here's a shot across the bow, and now we have like head-to-head conflict, fire and cotton, us, them. But then there's like more constructive ways where it's like, you know, yeah, that cotton is irritating in its current form, and it doesn't even know that it is. So maybe we can like refine it by engaging it and spin it and like wrestle with it, and then it turns into a nice sweater, and you know, that's great. Like that's a constructive sort of a thing. What do you think?
Oh, I got a lot of thoughts on that. So that's like I didn't specifically get into object-oriented ontology, but for my thesis, that's something, this will be, you know, this life thing that develops, but kind of, I think, again, like I'm not the scholar on this, but I think the beginning of it, what spurred it was actually Spinoza was a theorist from the 15th century, which is just fucking incredible. And basically he was kind of one of those revolutionary radicals that didn't get a lot of attention because he was against the church, or he did get a lot of attention because he was criticizing the church and criticizing the concept of morals and the difference between morals and ethics. And morals come from what a man says to another man they should be doing. So the Bible, right? Or law or that kind of thing. And ethics is more of like what comes from our like collective and individual kind of souls. It's not necessarily a soul. He uses a term called a conatus, which every piece of matter, us, everything in the world has a conatus, which we could say is like an energy field, which then kind of gets into, and this is just wild that he was writing this in the 15th century, but I think this piece of writing is what set the stage for like and new materialism and maybe metaphysics as well, but it gets into that metaphysical realm of like we are all part of this universe together, and we all are interconnected. We all exude our own energy. I am you, you are me, in a way. And whatever energy I put out there, my thoughts become reality. And those things, my thoughts are going to have like an impact on you. And also like connected with that, like as a mug as an example, like I think this is going to kind of ramble around. This is what's so exciting to me about art with this concept, because like the things that we touch or the things that we see and kind of like touch through that sense, like that affects how we kind of like just orient our body and like how we're feeling. Like if I pick up a mug that's like personally like incredibly rough, I'm gonna like feel something a little bit different. Like I'm gonna arrange my body in a slight way, you know, and I might have to like really think about like what I'm doing and why that's affecting me, versus maybe like something I'd be more like, even this metal mug, like I kind of don't like to hold it. I want to hold something that's more ceramic and smooth and has a weight, you know. And it just like makes me settle, right? So like as an example, I think like art that we can engage with like changes how we engage with our own energies. And this like this whole like idea of objects having energy, having a power on us individually and as a social collective, that's what like my whole thesis was spurred from. Looking at the fence, you know, because like literally it just came from me driving back and forth through Oregon and really looking at my hometown. And then it like cascaded into like, I'm really going to like look at the aesthetics of this fence as I drive by, and like this practice of trying to catch like signposts or fence posts really quickly and study them quickly without stopping. And then I was like, well, why am I not stopping in the car? I'm just going to get out and like take a look at the fence, like, because I haven't done that in a while. And then that totally changed. Like now that we're static, it's like, oh, this barbed wire, sinister, this wood has a patina and like an age to it. Who put that there, you know? And it has its own energy and life. Which then metaphorically is like, it represents the energy and control and the power that it represents of the US government, you know, and the history.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it is both, it physically, like literally enables how we like interact with the land and change how we travel and who has access to who. And it keeps wildlife, you know, in certain patterns or disrupts those patterns, but it also keeps people in patterns. As
Patterns.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's like it physically enables those things. We know those impacts, but like what is it also communicates to us on that metaphysical level. It affects my energy field and our energy fields, and it'll affect that person of maybe a native descent in a different, completely different way, you know. Or maybe it's we're not bothered by it at all and it like empowers us, who like depending if you're like a rancher or someone that works with the land or the government. So it's like it's all these overlapping interactions with the same energies coming off of things. As far as like, so that's just like I get excited about these things because like I think they matter, and I think they matter. They matter because I think I hesitate to say this is the answer to solve the problems, but I think it's like the biggest effing thing is understanding who you are and what you do in the world, right? And I think well, let me gather my thoughts here. I want to make sure I'm hitting all the points. Like it's a spiritual thing that needs to be addressed, and that can take the form of someone choosing a specific religion. But whatever it is, I think we need a spiritual holistic approach. And for me, and this was also present in my thesis, again with the metaphor of the fence, for me meditating and you know, I don't really put titles on, like I like taking from a bunch of different epistemologies and like religions, and basically, you know, I always see is like they're saying the same thing. And you can replace words. You could say like the universe, or you could say God, and I'm still going to react to it in the same fashion. And in order to understand like what I am, who I am, and what I can do. But for me, like as a tool for that spirituality, meditating, and I guess you could say kind of like a oh my god, uh, there's specific Buddhism. I don't know why it's falling out of my head right now, but
Zen Buddhism.
Zen Buddhism. Yes, thank you. I had like Tao, and I was like, no, that's wrong. That form of meditation of the traditional way is like sitting and staring at a white wall, specifically a white wall. um, and I don't always have that, and that's fine, but I can imagine a white wall. And the whole point, I think some people get wrapped up with the idea of meditation as being you're ridding yourself of the thoughts that you don't want in your head, but it's sitting there with them, and it's saying, hey, I see you, thanks for coming by, and now like I'm going to move on to something else. And I think that it's like you need to acknowledge the murkiness and the mire and the mess that you hold, that we all are holding and that we're all stuck within, and accept it. That level of acceptance is huge.
Yeah. It's awareness, right? So it's part of just that, like, noticing, right? Like, of noticing that I am, and it's kind of philosophical, right? Like almost like Descartes, like I notice myself thinking, I notice my thoughts, and then making a distinction of like, well, yikes, like maybe my thoughts are a murky mess, but like my thoughts aren't me. My thoughts are a like a thing that I produce. It's sort of a creative function of myself. And that's where I think of meditation in parallel ways to like what, like in a phenomenological sense, what are Christians doing when they're praying to the God of the universe? And what are Buddhists doing when they're meditating and noticing their own self? And there's this sort of like differentiation of self and then like divine entity or other, but it's happening within. So it's this like split. Yes. It's like we're factoring out our what we've conflated is like, this is all me. I am my thoughts. I am my experiences. And there's this sort of like I am. I think of like when Jesus says stuff like that, where he's like, I am kind of the things. And it's like, that doesn't make sense. But I wonder sometimes if like, okay, so Jesus had this like real like sober, really acute connection of like, hey guys, you don't have to do things the way that we're doing them. And he had that sort of objective removal of like ego, right? Like I know what I am and I know what I can do. I know what you guys think, and we don't have to do it that way. That noticing of thoughts. So I think, and I'm curious what you think of this, but like the parallels between like Christians praying to God, what it allows them to do is it allows them to escape their own ego, just in a utilitarian sense, like whether or not the Christian God exists specifically as Christians see God, but like functionally by going within themselves and laying, their confessions and their hopes and their dreams and speaking those or thinking them, but communing in an effort to commune with a God outside of themselves, that what their effect, I mean, at least, at the very least, they're accomplishing a sort of self maintenance, which is giving their anxieties, giving their intentions, sort of an agency of their own, and it's a sort of like self-regulatory, so that not everything's falling on our shoulders, and then if our life's a mess, like we're screwed and we're confused, and that messiness.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's I think it's so beautiful that I see it as such similar approaches. Like if we're going to keep comparing Buddhism with like Christianity, it's like I'm going to pray to God who has made a plan. I'm made in his image. He has a plan for me. And through this act of praying, I can kind of recenter myself on what I'm here for.
And my own limits, right? Like it seems like there's an acknowledgement of like, and this would also be a criticism though that I take, which is, or that I give, which is like, we have more agency than we realize. Like Jesus said, you can move mountains if you have the faith, right? But like, there's an acknowledgement of limits. Like, hey, my kid's sick and I'm not in control, so like, God help me. There's there's a healthy acknowledgement in that moment of like, it's not in my hands. And but the nature of the representations, Hannah, is really interesting because like the steps of representation, like, are we in full presence and are we in like a direct relationship um, with our belief, or do we muck it up? And so I'm interested in how art relates to religion, and I think a lot of well-intending religious people, like in Christianity, for example, it's like, if we're supposed to be Christ-like, like Christ
Yeah.
communed with God and functioned in a very human, connective way. And so instead of trying to act Christ-like, I think a lot of Christians act Christian-like, and Christians act like they're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to be like Christ. They're trying to please God. They're trying to live a life worthy of the salvation that they have. There's like all, and so there's a distinction there of like, instead of just doing the thing, you're trying to be like what you think it is to do the thing. And the way I see it, there's like a step of removal from, and in art the same way. It's like, if I'm trying to make art, I'm not making art. But if I'm just doing the thing, then I'm making art. There's that, like, it's a real subtle distinction, right? And it's like trying to be authentic versus just being yourself.
Yes.
There's that phenomenon like that pops up all over the place for me in life. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And I think like
Have you always known that? Because I'm like, I still make that mistake. Like, have you known that since you were a little girl?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's just part of life. Like, we'll always be making that mistake. It's not like one day we're going to be, aha, I figured it out and I'll never be like mucking it up again. That's like, mucking it up is incredibly important. And I think one, just recently, like this vocabulary to kind of like break it down for me, that rung true for me, at least in this concept of like talking about what role does religion and spirituality play also with art, was listening to Marianne Williamson talk. I don't know if you know of her. She tried to run for president, but she's been like throughout her career, she's probably in their like 50s, 60s now, like a spiritual teacher, and talks a lot about metaphysical like ways of being, but often it's kind of like, I don't know, you could call her like a prophet or like a priest for this this particular book called the Book of Miracles. And it's like metaphysics using the terms of like God, the one begotten Son, and like the Holy Trinity. And it's really awesome. And you should listen to her talk. I could send you one particular YouTube.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Great. But the key concept is there's a reality of love that is what we're made of, the universe, the God, whatever you want to call it, that is where we're supposed to be. And I don't want to use like should and supposed to. That's what we're made of. And then there's this illusion of fear that we create in our minds, and social greed and all of those forces create these patterns of where we put ourselves into this illusion of fear. And the battle is to recognize when we're sucking ourselves into that or we're stuck in it and come back the other way. So praying is, I'm really stressed out by this. I have all these worries. These things are consuming my mind, or man, I had these bad thoughts about this person, and like, I don't want to be this person. That's the illusion of fear that I'm kind of like shedding in order to recenter myself. Same with Buddhism, uh, meditation. Here's the illusion of fear and the thoughts and like, you know, actual form, and I'm trying to bring them out and understand like, okay, I feel insecure about this, or I have that and this. Here it is, but I don't need to be there. I need to be with me in this, the reality of love. And with art, the same thing happens. I think like art, I think there's something interesting about like our culture, a Western culture, specifically America, where art isn't valued as having a place. It's the first thing to be cut, you know, less so in Europe. They have more of an investment in it. But, you know, it's like, I think I shared a couple times on Instagram where it was like top 5 essential employees and top 5 non-essential employees. First one on the essential is nurse. First one on the other list is artist. Like even before telemarketers, before all those spam calls that you get, I was like, oh my God. And that shows it right there. And it's sad because a lot of other cultures, which have it figured out and know who they are, and like have like more maybe a cultural group, spiritual, like collective groundingness and who they are and why they're there and why they're unique people and why they love themselves. They're not clouded by the Western capitalist nastiness that continues to evolve and get worse. They, art and life are inseparable. They are the same thing. And so like that illusion of fear always comes up in a project. Oh, am I doing this wrong? Is someone going to get mad about this? Is this even like worth talking about? And oh, I had all these thoughts and now all of a sudden I'm not even sure what I'm thinking, and like I should just stop. Like, but when, like, again, as a practice, and that kind of goes in for me with personally, like this is just scratching the surface. Like what can I scratch here? And like when I start to feel those things like pop up and I start to get anxious and like shut down, I have to like just pause even for like 30 seconds and like, okay, what is, you know, it sounds kind of cheesy and woo woo, but like what is my heart saying right now? It's saying, oh, it's saying, Hannah, like for example with this book, it says, Hannah, you don't need to do writing for this. You just need to use your great great grandmother and your grandmother's writing and put it together in a certain way. You don't need to worry about what your voice is, because your voice is coming through theirs, you know. So yeah, I guess in short, you know, I'm rambling quite a bit, but that, like, acknowledging that we as individuals, as artists, as people in this world, we already have like a preordained purpose. And that doesn't mean we don't have free will. It just means like we're here for a reason, and you got to let your strengths and your beauty shine, and make sure that even though it's going to happen, you're going to like fall into that illusion of fear, like have the tools to come back. And as far as like, you know, trying to think about this social moment and call out culture and these things, like honestly, when I sit and think about it and I get past like, oh God, I'm so freaking tired of these people, like the anger, the secondary emotion of anger, I'm more so just sad because it's like I get the feeling that maybe you don't know who you are. And so you're regurgitating these things that you think you should share, and you think you should be meet a quota of lashing out at people, you know, 5 people a week, and like and that's not a way of love. That's fear. That's I don't want to be doing something wrong, so I got to get someone else that's doing something wrong, instead of like, you know, what you talked about in the last talk, your metaphor, which I effing love metaphors. They're a great tool for us to break down these big things. But like you're on a sports team and like, hey, shortstop just did a nasty play, and we're all going to talk about that together in like an approachable way. So it's like these people that, you know, they have good intentions. They want to see social justice. They want to see these things better in the world. I think they're just sitting in that illusion of fear of, rightfully so, like, how do we do all this? Oh, I got to do it this way. And it's not constructive in the long run. And I think often, like, talking about people that I know that I see acting in those like patterns, I'm like, I hope that they can figure it out soon. I hope they can figure it out soon. I just want them to like be comfortable in who they are, and um they have to just come to that journey on their own, you know, and that acceptance. So
And then connect with that force of love, because it's not that they're confronting the wrong problems. Like I think we've identified some healthy problems, but that and I'm sorry to even like tack on anything you just said, because you just really kind of articulated a beautiful line of thinking. So I didn't think you were rambling at all. I think that was incredibly valuable what you just shared. But I think that's the trick, and that resource you shared with Marianne Williamson in the Book of Miracles, where it's like, if we can kind of universalize some of our representations, and we can still hold on to our individual representation. So Christians can still be Christians and Buddhists can still be Buddhists, but we start recognizing that there's really some common threads, and instead of getting hung up on the specific differences and then like digging in our heels and going over like tug of war over things that like it's the combativeness that's the mistake. It's the lack of constructive love that's the mistake. And if you look to the example with Jesus, I keep coming back to Jesus because our culture is so immersed, and I have a lot of like personal experience in church and in communities that are Christian, and it's like, when we really look at Christ, like he wasn't like I wish that there was a sound recording of his voice when he's confronting people. He just asks like really penetrating questions and like gets people to either leave or shut up, because he asks the right question where it's like, hey, what's this about? And just like a curious presence that he never said like, hey, you're all racist and you're going to burn in hell or something. Like that was that wasn't where he was acting from. And so
I see you people, or I see the struggle with this illusion of fear, and can I represent that kind of like waypost to find your way back to love, similar to the Buddha, right? Like I have found enlightenment and I know what that is, but this will all be your individual journey. I'm here as a waypost. So.
Well, Hannah, let's leave it at that. That's beautiful. Thanks for your time this morning, and I'll share this with you, and we can review the stuff we covered and do it again sometime soon. I'll text you, okay, buddy? Thank you for your time. This was great.
Bye.
Okay, bye.